because they are two different ethnicities. And if you go to Rwanda, you will see that Hutu and Tutsi, you cannot, yeah, there is no difference. They speak the same language, Kinyarwanda. They worship the same God, apparently, and they are the same people, except when first German missionaries, and then Belgian missionaries and Belgian colonial system, and then after quote-unquote independence, a self-serving apparatus of a meaningless state came about using the legal organized violence that we call African military to spark the genocide. If Rwanda can go beyond the genocide, reconcile with one another, and start moving forward, if South Africa can have the symbol of detention, Nelson Mandela, to emerge from prison to presidency and spearhead the reconciliation, which is a work in progress. Guinea hasn't experienced that, and we hope it doesn't. If after General Moussa Traoré in Mali, a history professor, archaeology professor actually, can be elected president and not violate the Constitution, not amend the Constitution to maintain himself beyond the term limit, and establish a lasting, at least a sustainable reconciliation between the Tuaregs and the rest of the Malian people. If after Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown in Ghana, and a spiral of military and civilian coup and counter coup took Ghana, and Mr. Ba just recalled that when Ghana became independent in '57, it had the same economic level of development as South Korea. We know what went down all the way to President Joey Rawlings, the civilianization of a military rulership. But Ghana today is one of the most respected countries in West Africa. If these countries and many more can reach that level, I do believe that Guinea can get there. But it's going to take the Guinean. It is very hard to be cerebral when things like what happened in Sigiri, Kosa, and others, people who had lived there, worked there, rented houses from the neighbor who happened to be Malinke, now in the heat of a masquerade of election are being raped, killed, maimed, and they are still doing the counter trek back to the Futa Jalon. When that is happening, it's very difficult to be cerebral. However, what happened in 1976, when the Toure regime labeled an entire ethnic group, the Fulani people, as plunderers. At that time in 1976, I was in school and we were in what was called Université à la Campagne. We were sent to help our fathers and mothers to teach them to do what they did all their lives to raise us. It all began because some students in the University of Conakry were going to start a riot, and all of a sudden you have to disband the campus, break the mass psychology, and send us there. I personally, we lived in the unfurnished house of one of the people who were arrested and jailed in Labé in correlation or in connection with the Jaloteli arrest with the so-called Fulani courts. And that person, I can say, if he was a plodder, he was, forgive my French, a stupid plodder. He did gain from him because I lived in his house. And when he was arrested, we knew how the entire village in Labé reacted to all that. And you could multiply that across the country, just to take 1976. And when the Jara Traore issue happened in 1985, you could not imagine that it was people who had gone through all this from 1960 all the way to 1985, who were still rallying behind the same leaders/rulers to behave the same way, still exhibit that issue of non-institutionalized public life. It simply takes one click of demagogue in Guinea to know what buttons to push, to manipulate the most culturally savvy Guineans into a direction that otherwise they would not have taken. So in my, what I mean by not dwelling on the past is to not pick and choose particular aspects of our past and simply tailor them to serve particular interests that have nothing to do with the real problems of the Guinean people. And deliberately misinterpreting this past, we have seen that people following a leader or a so-called group, political party or others, trying to reinvent history. Unfortunately, most of the people doing that are among the intelligentsia, which is very, very dangerous for a country. Refusing to recognize the holistic nature of history, our history as Guineans, has something to do with that. We have ingrained in our social and collective psyche this very blurred perception of history, to the point that the law is my enemy because it doesn't serve me. I recognize and respect the law as long as it serves my purpose. My here, by me, I mean a collective self. That can be an ethnic group, it can be a political party, and sometimes it's between civilians and the military, and sometimes it's between the political class or the political society and what we could call the nascent civil society. And manipulating ethnicity to steer the emotions of some of the most vulnerable segments of population, meaning the young men and young women, very vulnerable. And they want to know, they want to learn what happened in Guinea, unless we help them understand the good, the bad, and the ugly, and help them put that in a context which is not simply to look into the past and dig the dirt, but to use that. As a historian, I pride myself in saying this. The past is only relevant to the extent that it allows us in the present to build a better future. Otherwise, bury it. It's not coming back. It's a tragedy for a historian to say that. But I believe where Guinea is today, we need a forward-looking interpretation, analysis, and utilization of the past. A backward-looking interpretation of our past will only give us the story of the dog chasing its own tail. We are going nowhere. And I believe that learning from the past involves putting the past in a context which will help end impunity and avoid revenge. We have been living revenge in Guinea, at least in our mentalities. I will be a dissenter for a second to say this. When Alpha Condé said publicly during the recent political campaign that any Malinke who does not vote, who votes for Selou, is, I'm not going to use his term for the respect I have for you, is an illegitimate Malenke. That does not distance himself too far from what Bangamadu said in 1992-93, that it is our turn now. We have seen Malenke rule, we don't like it. We have seen Soso rule, we don't like it, and now it's Fulani turn. Now, I have no problem with rotating leadership if it is institutionalized. If the Constitution, and as a matter of fact, right now, as I'm writing a history of Guinea from World War II to now, that's actually one of the things I'm proposing. I'm not going to give you too much because I want you to buy it too much. I am suggesting that to break the stalemate of regionalism and ethnocentricity, to make some kind of a rotating system, to do away with the kingly presidency that we inherited from colonialism. Even though Guinea was never a member part of the Fifth Republic, French Republic, we inherited this kingly president. The president is all-powerful. He can dislocate, disband the Constitution at whim. He only needs one iota of justification. I want us to get rid of that. Perhaps we are too Americanized, but the president and the vice president elected by the people would secure a lot of things, instead of having somebody appointed prime minister that nobody knows. Have a bicameral national assembly, which means the president, we have 4 regional entities: Lower Guinea, Middle Guinea, Upper Guinea, and Forest Guinea. If the president were to come for this term from Lower Guinea, the vice president should come from, say, Middle Guinea. The president of the upper chamber of parliament should come from the forest, and the president of the lower chamber of parliament comes from the 4th region. We have all 4 regions represented, which means every single political party will have to prove itself worthy of all 4 regions in order to win anything there. And if you have that balance of power, you are going back to the traditions of Africa, which Mr. Moyengo just explained. In Africa, kings, rulers had their councils, and up to, as he said, their marital and dietary life were regulated, and they didn't have a total impact. We are going back to Africa. And at the same time, we are branching out to the modern system of checks and balances of working democracy. I refuse to believe that Africa is allergic to democracy. I believe that we can do it, but it will take us. And I'm going to conclude by saying I'm going to use the term diaspora here because we know what we mean by that. We, the diaspora, the Guinean diaspora, have a unique role to play if we're going to move the country forward.